It ought to be in some fashion easy to do that with people. And not only easy, but it should be, if we're seeing it rightly, one of the highest of priorities for us as Christians and as a church. In those parables, the parable of the lost sheep, the shepherd leaves the 99, and then Jesus says he goes after. His words are very intentional. He goes after the one lost sheep. In the next parable of a woman who loses a coin, his words again ought to be listened to. Pay attention to them. The woman loses a coin, and what does she do? She lights a lamp, Jesus says. Then she sweeps the whole house, leaves no dust bunny unturned. Jesus didn't say that. I added that. And seeks diligently for that lost coin. Do you notice the language here? This is how we ought to be with those who are lost. I once heard a pastor, I was visiting a church, and they were talking about evangelism, and the pastor prayed at the end of his talk. He said, Lord, I want you to bring in the lost people from the north. It was a very eloquent, long prayer. North, south, east, and west. Our doors are open, Lord. Bring them in. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm listening to this prayer, he's got it all wrong. We're not supposed to ask God to bring them in. What is God saying to us?
Bring them in.
You go get them. Jesus said, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. Now, are there any fishermen or fisherwomen in here? When you go fish, really? Well, you don't have any water, so that's kind of part.
No, we have a big lake out there.
Where?
The reservoir.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, it's a very famous fishing place.
Okay. Well, fishing question for you then. I think you can handle this. When you go fishing, do the fish come to you or do you go to them?
And we put out the bait.
Yes. Hello. And another thing, someone once said to me, you got to catch a fish before you can clean it.
Yep.
Is that true? If you insist that the fish not be smelly and slimy and gross before you bring it into the boat, will you ever catch a fish? Well, then why do so many church people, when a lost, broken soul, desperate for help, walks in, bleeding all over because their life's falling apart, they're smelly and they're slimy and they're gross, why do so many church people stick up their noses and go, ew? I'm not saying anybody here does that, but you got to catch fish before you clean them. And about bait, does one type of bait catch all fish?
You have to have it for that specific.
What Chris Pratt did that was so brilliant, you said he talked about poop. Well, who's he talking to? He was talking to an MTV audience filled with millennials who get off on gross humor, and so he had these 9 points. He filtered in, he sprinkled in some humor that they could relate to. He spoke their language, so that when he came around to the points that he really wanted to slip in, they'd listen. That's what Jesus is doing by hanging out with these people. He cares for them. He wants them to know that up front. You got to use the right kind of bait. My father did this with me. What you shared there, Sandra, reminds me of my father. I am saved because of something my dad did. When I was a senior in high school, I had backslidden from faith. I accepted Christ at 11. I had a good run till my last 2 years of high school, and I backslid seriously. My parents didn't know it. They're strong Christians. They didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know how to reach me. One of the excuses I was throwing out is that Christianity is so dull. And exhibit A of that was my parents. They're just dull, drab, dreary people, and the proof of that is the music they listen to. I was born in the 60s, and do you know what? You're going to be shocked at this. I missed the Beatles the first time around because my parents were listening to Percy Faith. Can you believe it? So I listened to music all the time, and my stereo was cranking out Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles and Bachman Turner Overdrive. Remember them? Taking care of business, let it roll down the highway. Well, there was this folk rock band called Mason Prophet in the 70s that was led by a guy named John Michael Talbot, who played the most awesome guitar, and he had the best voice. And John Michael Talbot became a Christian, and then he did something really nasty. He took his rock, folk style of music and put Christian lyrics to it. And I didn't realize this, but my father found out about that. And so my dad, who did not like this kind of music, unbeknownst to me, they had cassettes back then. I know Joe's like, cassettes? What's that? Back in the caveman days, Joe, you would not have wanted to live. It was just, your parents and grandparents were a hardier breed back then. Cassette tapes. You couldn't get to the place in the song instantly. You had to fast forward and wait and turn the tape over. I was in the living room doing some homework. Dad was in the dining room balancing the checkbook or something. He puts on this tape and turns up the volume. Here I am doing homework, and I hear a sound that I'd never heard before coming from my parents' stereo. Good music. I put down my books, and I walked down the hallway, and I peeked around, and Dad was so cool. He's like the Pied Piper. He just kept looking down. Hello, son. Blah, blah, blah. Now, did I say, gee, Dad, that's great music. Who is that? Did I say that? No, I'm 17. I have absolute knowledge of the universe. Of course. So the next day when Mom and Dad went to work and I got back from school, I rummaged everywhere for that tape. Of course, Dad stuck it deep in a drawer somewhere, the rat, but I found it. That music, John Michael Talbot. And other, you teens today have to, another thing I want you to appreciate, these are the dark ages where you didn't have music, Christian music, in a style that you liked. You know, there have been a lot of battles fought in church life to even sing some of these beautiful songs we sang today. And there should never be worship wars in a church. There should be a good respect for each generation's music. Everyone should get a song that meets their, you know. I talked to Bill and his dear wife, and they were talking about Blessed Assurance. And I guarantee you, when they hear that song, that brings a tear to their eye, and it draws them close to heaven. And for me, a song like, there's an old song called Shine, Jesus, Shine, which is now like an old song. I hear that song, and it does things in me. And then a song like Oceans that we sang, that we're going to sing. We're going to close the service with that. Is a beautiful song. When I left my church, in our last, you didn't know this, but our last service, our goodbye service, Janice and I are taking this big step of faith, selling our house, stepping down from ministry, moving across the country, completely trusting in God, not having jobs, not having a home. We're going to completely trust God. Well, Oceans that's what Oceans is all about. You pay attention to the words when we sing it. And we sang that song at my goodbye service, and boy, my Father did not expect me to come to him. He came to me. He entered my world so that his son could be saved. Chris Pratt did the same thing. All of them following their Lord and Savior, who told them, who modeled for them how to do this. This is how you catch men and women and bring souls to me.